Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Onmachtige God, ons bid dat u gedrein ons vergaderings, ons dien odege wijsheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou. En dat u ons sal help om ons te komenge te workom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela Nkosi ilizwe lethu nabantu balo, umisele ukulunga kwiphondo lethu. Nkosi sikelela iAfrika, gcina abantwana bayo, kokela Nkosi inkokheli zayo, inike uxolo Nkosi iAfrika. All this we beg in your most holy name. Amen. You may all be seated. Welcome, honorable members. Blessed afternoon. And thank you to the Honorable Premier and Honorable Philander for joining me in the house. I would have otherwise been very lonely here without you. And thank you to the honorable members that are connected virtually, including the Deputy Speaker that is also connected virtually. I would like to request the honorable members in terms of the directives that we've been using as the basis for our conducting of hybrid sessions, which are now recognized in terms of Rule 1, that we please adhere to the stipulations and the guidelines, that if you're not speaking, please do not activate your microphone, and also try and keep your video off for the purposes of stability of the network. We do, however, wish to request that if there is a point of order, please do so by a raise of hand or by indicating in the chat room, for which the presiding officer will recognize you. I also wish to bring to the attention of the Fourth Estate, the members of the Fourth Estate, the media, as tempting as it may be, please do not activate your camera or your microphone. You are guests as you've always been, and we appreciate that you continue to attend our sessions and your continuous interest in the work we do as this provincial parliament. At this stage, I just want to indicate to the honorable members that we understand the impact of load shedding, but there's no scheduled load shedding today. And there are, however, some indications from some members. In fact, there's one which I am aware of, Honorable Minister Fernandez, who has indicated that if there is a problem with her connectivity, there's maintenance in the system where she is. But she will, however, be active, and if there's a problem, please be mindful of that. It has been raised with the presiding officer. I do wish to indicate furthermore that if there's any disturbance that has not been forewarned, that will be because we have chosen a different location, which we cannot be responsible as Parliament for that connectivity. At this point, honorable members, I would like to begin with the interpellations, and there are two interpellations before me. One is by the Honorable Member Bosman to Honorable Minister Fernandez. Notwithstanding the shortcoming that I've just indicated, we'll go ahead with the interpellation, and I'll recognize the Honorable Minister.
Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker, to the honorable members and guests in the House. I wish to check, Speaker, can you hear me audibly?
You are loud and clear, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Honourable Speaker, I wish to thank the Honourable Member Gillian for the question, which is in the form of an interpellation. The question has two components and it regards accessibility to special needs children. In terms of Part A, the protection of children with disabilities is of paramount importance to our work as a department and as a government, as we believe that every child in society is worthy of being loved, protected, and cared for. Early childhood development is regarded as a crucial prevention and early intervention program that is critical for the social and emotional development of children. Furthermore, the department's commitment to providing help and support to persons with disabilities cannot be understated. Presently, we are providing funding to 10 ECDs rendering specialized services to children with disabilities that focus on capacity training to practitioners, parents, and children using an unbiased approach in the management of children with disabilities. During the initial COVID lockdown, Honourable Speaker, we continue to provide support to all ECD centres, including special needs centres, for the disabled, despite the fact that they remain closed. We continue to provide them with funding. Funding was used for the salaries of staff, and 70% of the ECDs used the funding to feed over 50,000 vulnerable children across the province. The department continues to work closely with registered ECD programs for disabled children in terms of ensuring that the necessary measures are in place to help protect both ECD practitioners and children at these respective facilities. The department has not only established monitoring plans to ensure that ECDs are adhering to COVID-19 health and safety protocols, but continues to provide additional assistance and support as well as personal protective equipment. We have come a long way in terms of increasing our support to this vulnerable grouping. The total budget for persons with disabilities for the current financial year is 196 million rand compared to the 45 million rand allocated in 2009. Despite the increase, we still have great strides that we need to make in this regard regarding special ECDs for children with special needs. In terms of the B component of the question, by strengthening working relationships and setting clear roles and responsibilities amongst role players, which includes the Department of Health, Education, and DST, we can minimize duplication of some of the tasks currently being completed, and in doing so, ensure that funds are available or are better allocated. It is important to note that the above stated departments all have a specific role to play. Properly supporting ECDs and expanding their availability to disabled children is one way that we can achieve this. Honourable Speaker, later in this year, the government will host a multi-stakeholder forum where the ECD sector specifically will have an opportunity to engage government and raise and address issues and concerns. The forum will also serve as a platform to get inputs on the proposed migration of the ECD function from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Education, which is earmarked by the national government for implementation in 2022.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You'll get a
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize the Chair of the Portfolio Committee of the Standing Committee, Honorable Bosman.
Good afternoon, Honourable Speaker, Minister, members and colleagues. As the Minister outlined, the ECD sector has recently come under the spotlight with funding being delayed to provinces to pay out the ECD beneficiaries. We've got a national government delaying not just funding, but also the verification of beneficiaries for the ECD stimulus program. It is important to show the difference in how this province deals with ECD centres compared to our national colleagues in Pretoria. In addition to the support provided by the province, we also need to shine a light on how this province supports all marginalized groups through ECDs, because ECDs do not just focus on children, they also focus on ECD practitioners. We cannot continue to allow the failures and inadequacies of Pretoria to drag us down. As I understand, the province is still waiting on the national government to finalize the list of beneficiaries for the vetting of the ECD stimulus funds, and we hope that Minister Zulu will get our act in order, because we need to support those ECDs that specifically deal with vulnerable children, such as those with disabilities. The early childhood development centers that are waiting for the disbursement of this much needed ECD stimulus fund are really those who work hardest to enable us to support some of our most youngest citizens. But the sector is frustrated because DSD nationally has messed up that process, and Minister Zulu continue to prance around, not assisting the sector. But we are grateful to you, Minister Fernandes, and the department for the hard work that you are doing to support ECD centers, and specifically to support ECD centers that cater for children with special needs. The main question, Minister, and through the Speaker, should actually be, what impact will the shifting of the deck chairs on the Titanic, that is the national DSD, have on the impact of the functioning of the sector? If you are not currently seeing a coordinated and well-resourced plan from Minister Zulu, how can we have any confidence when the ECD function moves from DSD to DBE, especially since this project is being supervised and coordinated by President Ramaphosa? Why do provinces have to suffer under the lack of planning and vision from Pretoria? Why is it that the national minister thinks that young people and younger people in our ECD sector, and specifically younger people who are physically challenged, have to suffer under the inadequacies and the bad decision making that takes place in Pretoria? They should really devolve more of that decision making to the provinces, so that we can show how we direct the appropriate budget and resources to this important sector. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Postman. I now recognize Honorable Bakubaku Force.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, can the MEC give more details of the location of these supported ECD centers? I ask because I read somewhere in media earlier this year that the waiting list of children who are yet to be placed and assessed in specialized school in the southern suburbs alone was at 800 minimum. This shows the number could be higher in the previously disadvantaged communities. Does the MEC have information regarding the children in waiting list for placement in special needs schools? What is being done to fast-track the replacement? The parents have been complaining that in private facilities, they pay something between 6,000 and 8,000 on monthly fees. This is really high, and many parents cannot afford it, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. I want to commend Mrs. Terry Stevens and her mother, Karen Fraser, the co-founder of Include the Early Intervention Center in Retreat. Sorry, Speaker.
Only 30 seconds.
Let me continue. For early intervention center in retreat to cater to special needs children who are not yet of school going age in the area. The MEC and the department must therefore tell us how are they supporting such effort from caring parents in the poor working class community. What plans are there to support the efforts to open similar centers in areas such as Kayamandi, Mitchell's Plain, and the rural regions that mainly affected by challenges like optimism and fast? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members are now recognized. Honorable Bosman.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm grateful that Member Baku Force has raised the issue of more financial support, and it's a pity that Member Baku Force is reading in the media about the problem when we've been discussing these issues in our committee. I agree that we need more support for the sector, and I hope that we will be able to get the budgetary muscle to continue the work that the department is doing, to expand the programs running in the ECD centers, as well as the partial care service. I want to commend the department for the range of programs that we have in ECD centers, because in addition to providing physical space, we also need to actually make sure that these ECD centers are supported through programs such as psychosocial support, as well as programs to support NPO partners, because we do know that many of these ECD centers are started by parents of children with special needs. And I want to also ask that the department look at how do we expand the training and support that is provided to NPO partners, specifically on training safety parents on the department's database, so that more children with disabilities can be accommodated, not just in specific centers, but also in other centers. I'm grateful that the department gives support to ECD centers specialized in looking after children with disabilities.
Honorable Bosman, please take your seat. Honorable Bagu Force, your microphone is on. Will you please deactivate it? Thank you very much. You may proceed, Honorable Bosman.
Thank you, Speaker. As I was saying, we are grateful for the funding that the department provides to these ECD centers specializing in looking after children with disabilities. And this is a sector where we've got a growing number of children on the waiting list for these centers. And as Minister Fernandez outlines, and I welcome this in my capacity as chairperson, that more collaboration is taking place between the Department of Social Development and the Western Cape Education Department, because looking after our children is not just a social development response, it needs to be a whole of society response. If our objective is to build an inclusive province, we have to make sure that we don't just accommodate people in specialized facilities, but that we actually integrate our ECD facilities so that more ECD facilities can accommodate more children, not just those with special needs, but also children who operate in the mainstream ECD sector. Speaker, I want to also say that national government really needs to come to the table and make sure that we've got an ECD strategy that enables the work that the Department of Social Development is doing, because our Department of Social Development has shown that they do go above and beyond what is required. As the Minister outlined, during the COVID-19 period, our ECDs were perhaps the best supported, and we've seen in the media how other provinces refused to pay their ECD sectors and their NPO sectors, and they actually had to be compelled to do so by the courts. So I do hope that the national government will come to the party to make sure that the approved portion of applications for ECD funding in the Western Cape increases significantly, because we must reward those who provide for the sector. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Bosman. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable members for their contribution and the very important questions that they raise. To the Honourable Gillian, there has been engagement at a technical level regarding the migration of ECDs from social development to WCED. The Minister Schaefer and I attended a session last year. However, there is a need for clarity on this move, because the ECD sector has indicated that they are seemingly in the dark, and partial care and children with disabilities is one of the areas that they would need clarity on. So that is a valuable point that you have raised. Regarding the payment of the stimulus fund, in our province, we were allocated 53 million. The processing of all applications were done at a national level. So we receive the applications in batches. I have since written to the national minister asking her to reopen the exercise for the Western Cape, if not for the whole country, because it is evident that there will be money left if we pay out based on the number of ECDs that have been approved, and it will be an absolute disgrace to return money to Treasury that is intended for the ECD sector. To the Honourable Baku Baku Vos, we are indicated that we have 10 facilities. In the Metro North area, we have 3 Beertjies. In Cape Winelands, we have Merendal Pre-Primary. In Paarl, we have Tembakosi Daycare. We have Vrolike Vinkies Daycare. We have Vrolike Vinkies Opleidingsentrum. There's also the Playway Preschool in Somerset West. And then we have facilities that are supported by our disability program. That is Samba Bisana Community Development in Crossroads in Ianga, Ilundi Daycare in Dunoon, not registered as a partial care, but funded for children with disabilities. We have the Kaylee campaign in Plumstead, which is in the process of getting the required documents from the municipality. And then we have the Nambakiso Daycare in Lower Crossroads in Philippi East. So whilst we have 10, I must reiterate that the need for more specialized facilities is a desperately needed one. However, we all know that there are funding constraints, but I am certain that when National rolls out the migration, they will also provide us with clarity on what the intended steps are to deal with ECDs that focus on children with disabilities. However, Honourable Speaker, it takes a whole of society, and as much as it is DSD, we are also going to lean heavily on the Department of Education and also the Department of Health. And in closing, I would like to say, as governments at a local, national, and provincial level, we must always act with the best interest of our children in mind. When it comes to our young children who are not yet able to speak for themselves, it is up to government, civil society, and the sector, which has been very vocal, to ensure that the children's safety, well-being, and dignity is kept intact. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes the debate on this interpellation. I now go to interpellation 2 by Honourable Christians to the Honourable Minister Mitchell. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to Member Christians for the interpellation. The exact cost to repair roads due to protest action has not yet been determined, but the work mainly consists of repairing minor damage to the road surface after clearing of rubble, and is done as part of the normal routine maintenance action, which happens on a daily basis. A system for separate costing is therefore not in place to determine the exact cost. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That was nice and snappy. I now recognize Honourable Christians. I know he's going to do the same.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you for that. Minister, when I read the reports, I saw that SANRAL had their costs of damages, and also the previous MACO member, the City of Cape Town Felicity Purchase, also had their costs determined. When I asked the province, I'm looking at provincial roads, because this is an ongoing thing, Minister. We have the damage of roads, and I'm just thinking, you know, with the, and you said rightfully so that you cannot determine the cost. The problem that I have is that we've got so many broken roads and so on, and surely that must put a strain on your department when it comes to provincial roads in order, because where you can maybe tar one road, you must go back to another road. And that's why the question was that I just want to ascertain, is it very costly? Because, it's like going backwards. Every time if you think you're going forward, they're going backwards. That's why the question, Minister, pertaining to the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Through you, Honorable Speaker, I'd like to thank the Minister for that clarification and just want to perhaps build on what he said. Our transport infrastructure, particularly that of our roads, is the backbone of our daily economic activities. It is how people get to work as well as how our goods and our services are transported to their respective area. Therefore, Honorable Christian should also be aware that in this financial year, the Department of Transport and Public Works has allocated more than 2.3 billion rand for the maintenance program. This is a staggering 33% increase from last year's revised estimates. Even though 2020 saw a great diversion of resources towards the pandemic health response, this DA-led government still managed to follow through on major construction and maintenance projects throughout the province. For example, the road between Somerset West and Stellenbosch. And on our last oversight visit, Honorable Christian was also on that trip. We rode beautifully through our roads. This shows that the Western Cape government continue to do maintenance and repairs on our roads. In addition to our province's commitments to service delivery, we also care about jobs and dignity. In reality, where 3/4 of our youth are unemployed, this department will continue with its graduate professional engineering program and will retain the current individuals. By doing so, we develop the social capital needed to ensure skills development takes place and that it provides our economy with enablers of opportunity in the future. As a public speaker, perhaps through you, a speaker, as a leader, perhaps Honorable Christian should also assist us and perhaps relay any charges against anyone. And also the Honorable Christian should perhaps use his voice to quell the process and assist us so the damage on the roads can be stopped. Instead of commenting on people's sexuality and negating the basic human rights to who they are, Honorable Christians might find some relevance. You speak on the roads. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wish to thank the Honorable Member for bringing up this subject, and I hope that then by bringing it up, the blame is not being put on the protest or the protesters. I hope that the blame should also be put on the non-delivery of services, because the reality of the matter is that in almost every part of the province, the quality of road infrastructure has deteriorated significantly over the past decade. The biggest challenge has always been insufficient spending on road maintenance in the province and in municipalities. Other causes are due to stormwater drains that have not been working for years, especially in the township, causing roads to be flooded for weeks, which causes serious damages to infrastructure. Such poor services rendered by the provincial government of the Western Cape to disadvantaged community is the same reason that leads to protest action and further damages to infrastructure. The ANC condemns in strongest possible terms the unwarranted damages to infrastructure and properties during protests, but we need not use that as a fig leaf to hide behind the failure of the provincial government of the Democratic Alliance to spend on roads maintenance. What we need is for the legislature to subpoena all municipalities, especially the city of Cape Town, to come and account about their plans and budget for road maintenance. The township and the Cape Flats communities resemble dump sites with roads littered with potholes, uncollected refuse, and blocked drainage with sewage swimming on the roads for weeks. Surely, such cannot be attributed to protest actions. That is what the MEC should tell us about. How is a department working with municipalities to ensure that there is sufficient budget for road maintenance and stormwater drainage, and that
Honourable.
potholes are fixed timelessly, not only during election years, as has been the case in the province. Thank you very much, Honourable.
Thank you, Honourable. Honourable members, now invite Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the reason also for asking the question was there was an article on the 10th of September 2019, and the article said damage to roads caused by protests costing Western Cape millions. And then it said in terms of the capital expenditure on the roads, construction projects undertaken by the department, protests may have a larger financial implication in terms of their contractual agreement with civil engineering contractors. It also says because of the delays and costs due to the strike and protest action are seen as unforeseen, which means that the employer, the provincial government, can be held liable to proven standing time and extended time in costs resulting from these delays if the contractor is not at fault. So Speaker, it was a question, and this is where I'm saying now the department can even be held responsible because of the delays when it comes to protest action. So I want the minister maybe
to please take your seat.
Okay, sorry, Speaker.
There is a point of order. Honorable Chief Whip, I see your hand. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition is interjecting, and I'm finding it very difficult to hear Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. I just dealt with that now. Some members, when they join the session, they forget to deactivate their microphones, and it causes disruption. And we'll just monitor that. And I want to implore the honourable members to really cooperate with the session so that we do not cause unnecessary disturbance in the activities of the session. On that note, Honourable Christians, please proceed. I was able to mute my my watch, and therefore your time is not affected. You may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to emphasize, is there going to be, the capital expenditure on roads, construction projects undertaken by the department? So because there is protest action, these works are affected, and it means that the work is delayed. So is there, with the extension of time resulting from the delays, and the contractor's not at fault, it means that the provincial government will be at fault, meaning that there's delays and even a greater cost to government. So the question that I've asked, Speaker, was more to do the damage caused by a protest cost the Western Cape millions, and I thought that the minister will be able to give us an amount. I thank you.
Christians, thank you very much. Your time was not up. I am seeing a hand by Honourable Dagmo. Honourable Dagmo, is that a point of order?
Yes, it's a point of order, Speaker. I just want to ask if it is in order for members, when they're participating in debates, to only rely on media reports for their speeches, because as I'm hearing Honourable Christians, he's just relying on a media report.
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable Dagmo, the Leader of the Opposition. That is an opinion. It's not a point of order. May I then proceed? And the next person on the list is Honourable Mackenzie.
Honourable Speaker, I spoke already.
Oh, thank you, Honourable.
Again, if you give me the time.
It's now the Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker.
Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you to the honourable members who participated in the interpellation. Let me from the offset say that I welcome the question or the interpellation by Honourable Christians, because it is very important that we look at the damage caused to the roads. The indirect cost of protest actions on the roads, namely the disruption of economic activities, are considered to be bigger than the cost of the damage to the infrastructure itself. Also of bigger concern is the theft and vandalism of public property and the invasion of road reserves. To get to Honourable Mvimbi, we, as the Western Cape government, road infrastructure and road maintenance is crucial to this department. For that reason, I have engaged, as my first engagement today, with the Central Karoo District Municipality to address exactly that. So it's not just the City of Cape Town, the Western Cape and the department is roads and road maintenance is important. I'm not going to continue with the, because I think Honourable Mackenzie addressed the issues, the other issues raised by Honourable Mvimbi. But thank you very much for Honourable Christians for raising this. And yes, it is a great concern. And perhaps going forward, that's exactly what I will do.
Honourable Minister, will you please take your seat? I see the hand from Honourable Mvimbi. Is that a point of order, Honourable Mvimbi?
Can the Honourable Minister take a question?
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'm responding to the questions that the Honourable Mvimbi raised. So no, I'm not taking another question because I'm not doing a dialogue with the Honourable Mvimbi. You can put in another interpellation.
You may please proceed, Honourable Mvimbi. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Honourable members. I now want to indicate to the House that's the end of interpellations. We now move to the questions for oral reply. We'll start with the questions that are standing over from the previous sitting of the 10th of June. Question 3 and 4 from those questions. I now recognize the Honourable Minister. The question was asked by Honourable Christians. Honourable Minister Fritz, Minister of Community Safety.
Good morning, salam alaikum, Moweni. I want to thank the Honourable Christians for the answer. And the answer we have in two components. I've received from South African Police Services a very high level answer, but it says 3A from them. Yes, there are measures in place to respond to outbreaks of violence as and when implement of national anti-gang strategy and the provincial response to anti-gang strategy. The provincial response has now been formally adopted by the provincial jocks and joints, and there is a task team that has been assigned to develop a comprehensive implementation plan. That's from national. From province, let us say what our position is. So, Mr. Honourable Christians, the A part of your question, yes, we have put in place a number of measures under the auspices of the Western Cape Safety Plan to bring an end to violence in the Western Cape. Our B part of your question is the objective of the Western Cape Safety Plan is to halve the murder rate in the province over the next 10 years via the integrated law enforcement, social cohesion, and urban design responses. These responses are at all times based on data and evidence and is designed at addressing the challenges of violence holistically with regard to the deployment of LEAP officers to the communities where there are outbreaks of violence. We use the following formula to determine such deployments, Honourable Christians. The operationalization of a 24-hour, 7-day shift is about to be implemented on the 1st of July. This will increase visibility 24 hours a day, more stable deployments for 24 hours a day, and equal deployment figures, and that's 90 per area. And we're talking specifically in those hotspot areas. We also know that we are also rolling out a reaction unit of 40 LEAP members to deal specifically with the flare-ups that you referred to in your question in areas where violence and murder patterns indicate this necessity, but that's not one of our hotspot areas like Steenberg, like Lavendale, like many times some of the other areas that's not on our hotspot list. The data used to determine such deployments are based on health, area profile, and SAPS data. So it's health data, area profile, and SAPS data. The focus for implementation is a in priority areas using the geographical approach with work there being 16 areas, of which 11 is in the metro and 1 area each in the 5 district municipalities. The implementation will be led by area-based teams that brings together national, provincial, and local government role players, as well as community-based structures, NGOs, and experts. The department will also support safety partners with interventions via the ABTs and thereby contribute to the efficiency of our safety partners. The department continues to work closely with all law enforcement agencies, neighborhood watches, CPFs, faith-based organizations, and other partners in partnership with the City of Cape Town. The department also launched the Law Enforcement Advanced Program, which is the LEAD program, which seeks to deploy 1,000 law enforcement officers by October 2021 in the crime hotspots for enhanced enforcement capacity. The Department of Community Safety offers opportunities to youth from communities across the province through various initiatives. And not only our department, but all other departments within the Western Cape government has these opportunities for youth. The Chrysalis Academy offers youth a 3-month residential training program to deepen their resilience and unleash their potential through mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and skills development. Work placement opportunities are offered where youth are placed in with safety partners, including municipalities, the Western Cape government, the South African Police Services, and non-government organizations. The Safety Ambassador Program is an integrated youth development program which seeks to create work opportunities for youth while they develop valuable skills and resilience to enable them to exit into further opportunities. The safety ambassadors will work closely with the area-based teams as violence prevention facilitators to enable the implementation of a violence prevention interventions in those areas. Furthermore, the department, in partnership with the Western Cape Education Department, there's school resource officers at schools with high risk profiles to ensure that enhancement of safety on school premises happens. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, on that note.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I've got the Honorable member who asked the question, Honorable Christians, if he's got a follow-up, following which I will have Honorable Allen and Honorable Kama in that order.
Thank you, Speaker. I've got a follow-up. And thank you, Minister Fritz, for the comprehensive reply. It's much appreciated. It's very encouraging to see all the interventions. Minister Fritz, the reason I asked the question is that, you know, especially in Lavendale, but most of the areas, killings and shootings are on a daily basis. It happens on a daily occurrence, and people are too scared even to come out of their homes. So I'm very encouraged with all the measures that's put in place in order to have safer communities, because with all the resources that you deploy and personnel that you deploy in the areas, you want results. And it seems to me, Minister, just a concern that the murder rate, you've got a target to halve the murder rate, but it seems to me that it's increasing, and that is a concern. So are you sure with all the measures? I'm just thinking back to, Minister, back to Bonteheuwel, when there was a lot of murders there. There was 100 law enforcement officers deployed in that area, and that then curbed the visibility curbed and, curb that killings happening there. So, Minister, when you say about the 90 per area, so that will be deployed in the hotspots and it will bring down the murder rate, because at the moment it seems like it's escalating at a daily basis. So the question is, I'm encouraged with the interventions, but our communities are not safe, and we cannot wait on SAPs with more resources and killings. We cannot depend on them. So that's why I'm asking specifically the involvement with the province with the safety plan. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Honorable Christians for really asking those questions, because it's exactly the questions that make us think also in terms of our approach. And I think we try to be as scientific as possible, as we indicated earlier, that our approach is data-driven and evidence-based. And so one of the issues, Honorable Christians, for that area that you spoke of, unfortunately, at this point, they're not one of the hotspot areas, where the murder rate is exponentially high. But what we have done, and what this decision of us to start on the 1st of July to deploy when there is a flare-up of violence, specifically in the area like Hillview, Steenberg, that area that you specifically mentioned, Lavender Hill, that we will be able to immediately deploy those people for an extensive period of time in that area to really bring down the violence. And what we have also done subsequent to that, before this, we have already appointed a couple of safety ambassadors in those areas. So I think the idea is that they always become the first eyes and ears of the department on the ground within a particular area. And I always quote the example of the shootings in Beacon Valley. The first I heard of the shootings was from one of our safety ambassadors. It gave me a blow to blow. At the background, you could hear the shooting, and what happened. And I could inform the police, who at that point didn't inform us at all. And I think that's the kind of importance of that role. But again, Honorable Christians, I think you make an important point, because what we must never give up. We must never give up on gangsters winning this war. We must, as we're going to have downtimes. We're going to have a time when it looks bleak. We must persevere. We must keep focused. And in this department, I'm happy that all the kind of thinking within the department is now centralized to the implementation of the safety plan. All those other buy stuff they used to do, they're now focusing on the implementation of the safety plan. And I really want to say also thank you to all other departments for supporting that execution of that plan. So thank you, Honorable Christians. Thanks very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Allen.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Speaker, through you to the Minister, I'm delighted to hear that LEAP officers will also now be deployed on a that LEAP officers will also be deployed when flare-ups occur. Can I just get clarity from the Minister that is on a 24-hour, 7-day shift system? And if the Minister can just elaborate on that in terms of how when those deployments will occur, and the engagement with SAPs in terms of the flare-ups, what will constitute a deployment in that regard to a non-hotspot at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Allen. Honorable Minister.
Enkosi, to the Honorable Allen. Yes, you heard correctly that from the 1st of July, we will deploy a squad of 40 LEAP officers who will basically be dealing with flare-ups. And as Honorable Christians indicated, you have these flare-ups sporadic from area to area, not all at the same time. Now it's in one area, then tomorrow it's today, as we speak. There were violent flare-ups in West Bank. Now, what happened in West Bank is that we can immediately deploy our existing LEAP offices of Delft to West Bank. And so, I mean, that is one example. But the point is, yes, there will be 24/7 in those areas from the 1st of July. Remember, we're getting our next installment of trained LEAP officers on the 1st of July. And that will enable us to do a whole lot more than what we are doing currently. And on the 1st of October, we're getting the other installment of LEAP officers, of trained LEAP officers that will then also be deployed and to assist in most of those areas. And you are right. I think you and Honorable Christians raised the issue of we're pushing the bar right up to 90 officers in a particular in the hotspot areas. But as we said, that 40 will be a mobile group, highly trained, that will immediately deal with immediate interaction, immediate responses. Because one of the issues we always find is that you can phone the ops, the provincial ops room, you can phone all of them. There are 2 POPs units in the province, completely undercapacitated. We haven't got, I don't know where the gang unit is. We've been asking where is the gang unit, but just the POPs unit are so stretched, and they all the time stretched in terms of human resources. And that's one of the issues that we're having this permanent fight with the National Department for capacity. And I wish our ANC colleagues can beg their minister, who is the ANC minister, to give us what we deserve, what we are due to us in terms of human resources and in terms of other resources. I'm happy to see we got a number of quite a few police vans and vehicles that's brand new vehicles that's been given to the province, and that we welcome. Please give us resources so that we can deal with the violence, and not as if this is the provincial responsibility. This is not. We're doing everyone a favor by getting money from other parts of other departments like education, like health, and like social development, and like all other departments, taking it away from there to make our communities safer, because the national government is too pathetic, too completely incapacitated to assist and to give us what is due to us. We're not asking for extra. So yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Alan.
In the Premier's Provincial Police Force?
Order, honourable members. Honourable Maran, you may not do that. You continue to do this, but it's totally unacceptable, Honourable Maran. Just want to request that we follow the rules. If there is a matter that honourable member want to raise for the attention of the presiding officer, just do so by raising your hand, which we have been doing in this house, or just by indicating in the chat room, and you'll be recognized for that purpose. Let us proceed, and I now recognize Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I want to check, because I think the safety plan promises an integrated approach to fighting crime. Also, I think the minister, there's a response he gave on a question in April about which showed the decline in terms of new cases opened, and also it showed the decline in convictions. And we know that in the Committee of Community Safety, we heard from SAPS the importance of CCTV cameras, how they assist in placing the alleged suspects onto the crime scenes. So I want to check, with that in mind, whether there is any plan, through whether the safety plan or the funding that we've given to municipalities for safety plans, if there is no plan to install these CCTV cameras that everyone is talking about in these areas. And with that, I want to check what does it take to replicate the success enjoyed by LEAP officers in stabilizing communities like Ponteville and Hanover Park last year, and why is this not the case in other areas? Thanks, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kama. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to Honorable Kama. I know he asked me a question, similar question like this about cameras. And we also have members of all our parties in the city of Cape Town, and sometimes we must direct some of those questions there, because our safety plan is not giving a cent to cameras. They must get the city and their budgets that they get for ward allocations in specifically ANC wards. They must use their money like in other wards, people are using it for cameras. And here they want to have parties and lunches and dinners instead of buying cameras for to keep people safe. So I really want to make that point. But I think the Honourable Kama asked a very interesting question around the approach in the Novenpark and Bontebel. And what we have seen, unless, and let us be frank about this, unless you have a police commander, a cluster commander, or a police station commander that is passionate, that buys into this program, and I can give you an example. Brigadier Jones in Bishop Lavis, he runs the best area-based team, a multidisciplinary team. He knows exactly how many people are on parole in his area. He knows, and he tracks them. Every single one of them are tracked. So that reoffending trend that we have seen with parolees, that people who are released from prison on parole, we have seen a trend of reoffending in Bishop Lavis and in that police precinct, which include Bontebel. One can see that the impact of a proactive, great leader in terms of management in that precinct. You also have a very, very active councillor in Bontebel itself, Councillor Angus McKenzie, who really drives a whole lot of the issues, who makes sure he's there on the scene. And that's the kind of thing that you need. In a Novenpark, a very similar picture. You have a passionate councillor, Alderman van Reenen. You had an amazing Colonel Fredericks, who unfortunately, was transferred at the height of his success. He was transferred to Mitchell's Plain, and we're now starting to see some of that success in Mitchell's Plain. But the point I'm making, unless you have a proactive, as in terms of the area-based team, a great leadership team at the police station level, and that deals with the whole precinct of that police station, you are going to struggle to get it on track. We are moving to all the areas, and I promise you, we will get, and I mean, Manny Nyanga is a great general who's in charge there. We will get it in Khayelitsha, we will get it right in Khayelitsha, we will get it right in Kraaifontein. All of those places, we will get right. And I think all we need to do is to keep focusing, use the lessons from the Bishop Lavis cluster, which include Bontebel, use the lessons from Novenpark, which is Philippi. Use those lessons in getting the rest of our police commanders, station commanders, to understand the whole concept of the all of society, the whole of society, the intergovernmental approach. And just by the way, the LEAP officers are always under the command of the South African Police Services. They don't do their own little thing. They fall in an integrated way under the command of South African Police Services. So there's no separate kind of operations that they just want to do. We go and we assist in specifically the boots on the ground in all those areas. And I think we must say thank you to everyone, from the city to the South African Police Services, to the traffic officers with Minister Dalen Mitchell's traffic force, to everyone forming part of integrated operations when it's required. But in most cases, the LEAP and the police are always integrated, and the other forces always add up. We're launching on Friday morning, Honourable Speaker, in the Overstrand municipality, a K9 unit that will again fall under, and together with joint operations with the South African Police Services. And again, it just speaks to pushing the boundaries and pushing criminals out of the equation, getting rid of criminals. And that's what all our duty is. And yes, we just so hope from Honourable Moran that we can get a provincial police force, because unfortunately it's not constitutional here. But I tell you, we will do 10 times better than this lame, defunct, collapsed ANC government of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Did I hear my name? Did someone call my name, Speaker?
Order, honourable members. Thank you, Honourable Minister. May I now request the Honourable Christians?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, just, and I hope the Minister notes that I'm really very concerned, and my questioning is to assist and to help. Just the Minister did answer this before, but I just want to know the LEAP officers that's going to be deployed. And I heard the Minister said this before, but I just want to make sure they have powers under the Criminal Procedure Act and not powers just to enforce bylaws. So they have the powers to address the gang violence. It's just not the numbers on the ground, but they have adequate powers, highly trained, in order to make a difference on the ground. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Christians, for that question. And that's exactly the point I emphasized in my answer just now around the integrated approach. So just to cover all loopholes, they have all those powers. Remember, they are also trained peace officers, so have those powers of arrest. But to just cover, and what they don't have is investigating powers. So they arrest the person, the police is with them, and when the police is not with them, they will immediately take the suspect to a police station where a police officer will open a docket and start with the process of charging the person, then getting the person to be locked up, and the person can then go through the court process. But I think it's a very important question you're asking, and that's the point we're making around the integrated and the integration of the LEAP officers with South African Police Service all the time. And yeah, that's basically the point you're making. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, that concludes the first question. We now move to the question by Honorable Christians to the Honorable Minister Mitchell. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to Honourable Christians for the question. The South African Police Service have early warning systems which alert them to the possibility of service delivery protests. Any questions relating to the prevention of unrest related to such service delivery protests is best dealt with by them, as it's not within the mandate of the Department of Transport and Public Works to prevent service delivery protests. The deployment of our provincial traffic officers to a location where service delivery protest action is reported usually occurs in circumstances where traffic officers are second responders. If Provincial Traffic Services is deployed to a location where there are service delivery protests, we will, as part of the provincial traffic safety protocols, assess whether a need exists to cordon off the affected location and redirect motorists. The South African Police Service and the Public Order Police have specific training and skills and are usually the first responders in matters of crowd unrest. Dealing with crowd unrest falls within the competency of the South African Police Service and, in extreme circumstances, the South African National Defence Force. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Just to ask the Minister, the provincial traffic was first traffic services. They have converted into highway patrol. If the Minister can just explain, because I remember the Premier said that their powers has increased in order for them to be more effective on the roads. And I know the primary function is with SAPS. The problem that I have, Speaker, is that people sit for hours on the road when there's protests. People complain, hour and a half, 2 hours extra on the road. And with the cooperation with SAPS and all the law enforcement agencies, is there, I don't know what we can do, but it's obviously people that say they don't have sanitation, people say they don't have these services. So there's also, the service delivery departments that must look at that. So that then's my question. I don't think we can continue in this vein where people's lives is in danger and so on. So if the Minister can just elaborate on the highway patrol and the interaction with other law enforcement agencies, but also service, people that render, departments that render services because of the dissatisfaction of people. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Christians is absolutely correct. The service delivery protest or service delivery, the lack of service delivery, is best dealt with in the various service delivery departments. And I think Minister Fritz alluded to in the previous question that some of these questions should be directed to the local municipalities. That being said, it's important to understand that some of these actions are criminal actions that cannot be remedied through the regulatory interventions. And whilst the department has a role to play, the South African Police Service must take the lead to ensure that these cases are investigated and that offenders are criminally prosecuted. So the department and SAPS is represented at transport priority committees where all these potential service delivery protests are highlighted. And obviously, Highway Patrol and the provincial traffic plays a significant role in ensuring that the roads are safe. I mean, the objective of the department is to give effect to ensure that communities and commuters are transported in a safe environment and dignified environment to economic opportunities or to schools. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I have the hand of Honorable Allen.
That was an old hand. So sorry, Speaker.
I thought you had a new hand, Honorable Allen. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Speaker, sorry. Honorable Speaker, I just want to find out from the Minister, what is our role, the role of public representatives during this phase of disruptions? We know government has a role, but what would you recommend? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. What is? Will everybody else please mute your mics? Everybody, please, your mics. Thank you. I've got the after the minister has responded, I've noted Honorable Mvimbi your hand, so you can rest assured you'll be the next person after the minister has responded. I recognize you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to Honourable Mackenzie for that question. Honourable Speaker, through you to Honourable Mackenzie, I think the important part is that as public representatives, we are the interface or the front face of our communities that have elected us to serve them. I think many of these service delivery protests are as a lack of that interface, and communities are disgruntled by the lack of service delivery. And I think the importance of a community's issues and service delivery issues need to be addressed. And for that reason, it's important, in particular local municipalities, that these are addressed, because that's got a ripple effect on all communities, and in particular the economy. And especially during this time, we have an obligation as government and as public representatives to ensure that an environment is created that we save jobs and livelihoods. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize Honorable Mvimbi.
Thanks very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Minister, I just want to check, because some of these protesters, Honorable Minister, they don't just fall from the sky. They are as a result of the non-delivery of services. There may be any engagement that we are actually having with your colleagues in the cabinet to try and alleviate some of these protesters by actually rendering these services that are needed. And maybe at some point you might also be experiencing some staff shortages in the traffic management department. And maybe how does that, if there is one, affect the efficiency of the department in controlling the traffic during service delivery protest? Thanks, Honorable Minister, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I through you to Honorable Mvimbi. I want to give Honorable Mvimbi the assurance that as the Western Cape government, all departments recognize that in order to provide dignified lives to the communities that we serve, service delivery is at the forefront of it. So this misperception that the Western Cape government doesn't care about service delivery is absolutely wrong. The reality is that many communities are represented by various different political parties. And if those individuals are not delivering to the communities, then that cannot become a Western Cape government issue. That being said, that as the Western Cape government, we obviously it's our responsibility to ensure that we create an environment and a dignified environment for the residents and citizens that we serve. The other thing with regards to and I can't emphasize this enough, the ripple effect that protest actions have on the economy and the lack of jobs that is at stake with that plays a fundamental role in the well-being and of our communities. Thank you, Chair. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I have Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Mvimbi rightly raised the issue of the unhappiness of our communities, and perhaps the Minister can share with us what is the impact of corruptions in municipalities when there are corruption on the service delivery matters. Thank you.
We're dealing with traffic management here. We're dealing with issues of traffic.
You talked about unhappiness of service delivery.
You seem to miss each other here. I'm sure you need to arrange a physical meeting. May I request that the honorable members exercise some restraint so that we proceed smoothly? I now recognize. Is there another chairperson?
No, Chair, I just wanted to propose a date for a physical meeting.
Is that Honorable Smith, Speaker?
Thank you, honorable members. We'll make sure that is arranged. May I recognize the Honorable Minister?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Through you to Honorable Mackenzie, the reality is that corruption, in particular where there's highlighted corruption in municipalities, it obviously affects service delivery, because the less money there is for service delivery, the unhappier the communities are that we are supposed to serve and are elected to serve. The reality is, if you look at the mismanagement and corruption that has been plaguing communities and municipalities for years, the impact that it has on infrastructure, that the daily the daily service delivery, what local municipalities are constitutionally mandated for, the impact that it has on the communities. And if you look at the Western Cape, I would encourage Honorable Mvimbi to look at where the service delivery actions or protests occurs, and who represents which political party and public representatives represents those communities. Thank you, Speaker.
I didn't ask that question. Is Honorable Mackenzie?
Order, Honorable Mvimbi. In the question session, the honorable members ask questions, and the members in the executive respond to questions. Now, if you don't like the answer, it does not mean it has not been responded to. So that is unfortunately the rules. I think it's only when the member does not respond to the question that is before him, which I think in this case the honorable member responded to the question. I now wish to request that we proceed. There's a hand by Honorable Minister Fritz. Is that a point of order, Honorable Fritz?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I really think these members are completely ungovernable. And they complain about lawlessness outside with the gangsters, but they are behaving worse than gangsters in the House. And I think you must deal with them, Honorable Speaker. They cannot just shout and scream and not adhere to the rules of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We'll definitely attend to that. Thank you, Honorable Minister. The whippery must please help the presiding officer in this case. I would request the chief whips of respective parties and the whips of the respective parties to please help me. I see the hand of Honorable Mvimbi. Is that a point of order, Honorable Mvimbi?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I really would want you to assist me on this, because what has happened is that what I was highlighting, Honorable Speaker, is that the question was asked by Honorable Mackenzie. Now, when the minister responds, he responds to me. Is that in order, Honorable Speaker?
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. I have responded to that because.
Okay, thanks, Speaker. Okay, Speaker.
Thank you. And my response will not be in any way different to the earlier one. It's only. Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. Honorable members, let us proceed to the new questions. Honorable Bosman asked the question to the Honorable Minister of Social Development, Minister Fernandez, and I now recognize the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. To the Honourable Gillian, thank you for the question. The question relates to SASSA's winter readiness program, and I was asked whether there has been any communication from SASSA outlining clear plans regarding their winter readiness. And I would need to confirm to the House that I have not received any further input regarding the previous meeting, which I had with SASSA on Monday, the 24th of May, 2021. It was at this meeting, Honourable Speaker, that I raised concern regarding the inability to provide a plan ahead of the harsh winter months that threaten the livelihoods and social security of vulnerable citizens living in this province. During the meeting, I requested that SASSA apply their minds when outlining their plans for the coming winter, which is now upon us. And as can be seen by simply taking a look outside, today the weather's really bad. So I wish to reiterate the importance of SASSA putting together effective plans to support our most vulnerable citizens, especially the elderly. The impact of winter, coupled with the rise of a potential third wave, which is now a realized third wave of COVID-19 infections, is concerning. And as such, all spheres of government have a role to play. In terms of question 2, what does the winter readiness plan entail? My response is as follows, Honourable Speaker. Although the legislative mandate of providing social relief of distress resides with SASSA, the Provincial Department of Social Development has been working tirelessly to ensure that winter readiness programs are operational in each region across the province. We have 6 regions and we require the support, however, we do require the support of other government agencies to help ensure that there are appropriate responses to mitigate the impact of disaster situations on vulnerable communities. The department's major preparations entail the provision of additional bed spaces for homeless adults, social work services aimed at family reunification, and social relief of distress. And unfortunately, in this regard, Honourable Speaker, the SASSA used to provide starter kits, and somehow that has been discontinued, which is a contentious issue, and they have indicated they would need to revisit their policy. So I am maintaining contact with them regarding the issue of starter kits. DSD has staff on standby to respond to natural disasters such as flooding or fires by providing support services, trauma counseling when needed, and other forms of psychosocial support. The team further facilitates access to humanitarian relief and food relief by means of conducting assessments before referring the cases to SASSA. DSD has staff on standby to respond to natural disasters, such as the counselling mentioned above. However, we do form part of a bigger movement, and disaster management is managed by the disaster management teams in the metro and in the district municipalities. So we are just one chain, one cog in the wheel, and we take our cue from disaster management when it comes to any disasters. However, we try to be responsive by being on site on the day of the fire or flood or whatever the disaster might be. And unfortunately, we don't have enough foot soldiers because we only have we've got 2,500 staff in this province, and we need to take care of more than 6 million residents. So we are strained, but we do try our best to provide the necessary support as quickly as possible when and wherever it may be required. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now recognize Honorable Bosman.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for that detailed response. And as background to my follow-up question, Speaker, I would also like to inform the Minister that I have written to SASSA asking them this question, and I'm sad to inform the Minister and this House that the acting regional head of SASSA has confirmed the media reports that SASSA does not have a winter readiness program in place, and that SASSA has never had such a program. And I think, Minister, my question to you would be, please, can you engage SASSA and advise them on how to put a winter readiness plan together, especially for the Western Cape, as winter comes every year and our people struggle every year. SASSA also indicated that they do not have the capacity to run such a program, and they rely heavily on the city of Cape Town. So my question would be, please may you ask SASSA or help SASSA to work with all stakeholders, especially smaller municipalities that cannot put such a plan together. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bosman. Honorable Minister.
To the honourable member, thank you for raising the issue. Yes, indeed, it is a challenge. I am engaged SASSA on a fortnightly basis together with departmental officials, and that was regarding the disability grant fiasco. SASSA has unfortunately closed out the disability grant on 37,000 and odd. So the need to continue the meeting is no longer necessary. In their opinion, however, I have appealed to them to continue the meetings, because when we met every second week, we had occasion to touch base on issues in a very collegial manner that encouraged collaboration. My concern was around that of the vaccination drive, registration, knowing that you have an elderly person in the queue coming in, could they assist with registration? And unfortunately, they had not made provision for either winter readiness or vaccination. So I will be writing to SASSA to ask them to restart our fortnightly meetings so that we can keep our relationship going. But I must add that we have also invited SASSA to sit in on our well-being workstream meetings where we deal with issues of food aid, homelessness, amongst others. So I'm hopeful, and I enjoy a good relationship with Mr. Mthlangu, the acting regional manager. So I'm hopeful that we can pick that up. But as you might have read in the newspapers, SASSA is seized with issues of fraud and maladministration. So I'm not holding my breath, but I will report to the House if I do get an occasion to get a date, and I will certainly follow it up. Thank you, Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, I now recognize Honourable Murray.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister, during the time when I was Minister for Social Services, Western Cape, we paid out our own grants. There was no SASSA involved. And I know that my Chief Director, Virginia Peterson, and Mr. de Graaff, who subsequently were employed by SASSA, they were my top people in the Western Cape. We paid out our own grants. We even had a women's league, which were beneficiaries of the system which we employed there. I think the ANC Women's League and the Vroue Actie of the National Party, they were partners in this, and it went smoothly. What happened since then? Why is our pensions in the Western Cape being paid out by national government? And why don't we pay out our own grants and our own pensions? And why do we leave it to the incompetent national government? Is there any reason for it, Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Murray. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
To the Honourable Marie, thank you for your input, sir. It is indeed sad that we are seeing a failure of epic proportions at a national level on the part of SASSA to take care of not only the elderly, but the disabled and even those who have to benefit from grants. I, unfortunately, don't have the power to change the current legislation. And at this point in time, SASSA is an entity which reports directly to the National Minister of DSD, Minister Lindiwe Zulu. What I have done, though, is to try and build the relationship with the regional office and the local office. So in working with Mr. Mthlangu and Tlangoti, we have seemingly made good progress. And whilst we can't change the status quo, I would rather embrace a collaboration and try to stay as close to them as possible to ensure that things stay on track. But sadly, it is a dismal failure. I have just seen a tweet now that said that 32,000 people received the SRD grant of 350 that were not entitled to receive that grant. So their systems clearly need to be reviewed. I come out of 30 years of banking, and I can tell you that there are systems that can be used today. So the entire SASSA platform, and I've raised this with them, I've said they need to revisit their operating model because it does not work in 2021. And so unfortunately, we can only keep banging on the door. And I will, in terms of serving the residents of this province, Honourable Marie, I do write frequent letters. I must admit, I don't very often get responses. Most of my letters fall into a black hole, but my last letter requesting an ECD actually received an acknowledgement of receipt. So there is dysfunction in the system, but we will continue to hold SASSA accountable and at the same time work with them to bring the change that our elderly people and that every citizen in this province deserves. Thank you, Honourable Marie.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I see the hand of Honourable Bosman.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Minister, SASSA Western Cape seems hamstrung by the incompetence of Pretoria. And in terms of Section 13 of the Social Assistance Act, the National Minister may provide social relief of distress to a person who qualifies and applies for such relief. SASSA is only mandated to provide once the person has applied. Has Minister Zulu ever engaged the MINMEC on any plans to amend the legislation or to address this growing problem?
Thank you, Honourable Bosman. I recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Bosman. We haven't had frequent min-mix. And when we do have min-mix, there is generally an agreed agenda. So the matter, if I were to be honest, has not been exhausted. I would request, or I could request that for the next min-mix, I would want the SASSA plan as well as the ECD to be placed on the agenda. However, it depends on the minister's availability at what time the meeting starts and at what time the meeting ends. So it has not been discussed at min-mix as far as I know. Thank you, Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Are there any other further contribution by members? There's only one opportunity left. It seems that's the end of it. Thank you. Is that Honourable Murray? You want to come again?
Yes, Speaker. I would urge the Minister to speak to the Premier. He can bring this matter up on the President's Advisory Council. All premiers sit with the President, the premiers of the 9 provinces, and that's the highest level of cooperative governance.
Honourable Murray, you must ask a question. What is your question?
Minister, would you ask the Premier to bring this up at the President's meeting with the Premiers?
Thank you, Honourable Murray. I now recognize the Honourable Minister.
To the Honourable Murray, thank you. The request is noted. I will certainly engage the Premier as I have regarding ECDs to highlight the matter at the Premier's coordinating forum. I shall do so. Thank you, Minister Murray, Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that's the end of the follow-ups on this particular question. I see the hand of the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Sorry, Speaker, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member Dagmar. Honourable members, I now go to the next question, which was put by the Honourable Makamba Boja to the Honourable Minister. The Honourable Makamba Boja is not in the session. There is an apology. The Honourable Minister, you may proceed with the question, or you may submit the written question to the Secretary. It's your choice. Honourable Minister?
So can you hear me, Honourable Speaker?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Or have you indicated that I have an option to submit my response?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Then I will opt to do that. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Also, the next one, the Honourable Minister Simas, the question was asked by the Honourable Klego to the Honourable Minister Simas. Honourable Minister, have got an option to proceed or submit the question, the written response.
Firstly, Honourable Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Well, Speaker, I came prepared to answer the Honourable Member, so if it's fine with you, I will actually give my response to the Honourable Member's question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The last question, Honourable Members, is by Honourable Christians to the Honourable Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Christians. The answer is as follows. There has been much media speculation around the rollout of a vaccine to teachers and staff at schools. Nothing has officially been announced by the Department of Basic Education thus far, and obviously they are leading this process together with the National Department of Health, although we are expecting an announcement hopefully very soon. Whilst we have been informed that the national government has secured the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccination for the education sector, which we believe may cover all teaching and non-teaching staff at schools above the age of 40, we have yet to be informed that it has been approved for use. It should be noted that this will apply to all schools, not just primary schools. In fact, Research shows that primary school children are far less likely to acquire or transmit the virus than older children and adults, which is one of the factors considered when the minister made the announcement about the return of primary schools. While details of the vaccine have not yet been finalised, the Western Cape government has nonetheless been making the advanced preparations in the event that the use is approved. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for the reply. I just want to ask the question. I see there was a survey done out of the 1,523 Western Cape primary schools and special needs schools that were surveyed. 1,195 feel that they are not ready to bring back everyday school from the 26th of July. Minister, is this with reference to the primary school learners returning to full-time, or is that now, as you can hear, most of them feel that people interviewed schools saying that they don't feel ready to be at full-time school. What is your reply on that, Minister?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. The survey that you are referring to was done actually on between the 18th and the 20th of May, before the National Minister gazetted the latest directions, and it dealt with a host of issues. It wasn't simply this particular issue. It wasn't done with this particular thing in mind. Some teachers at schools. Sorry, the indication was for teaching and learning with 100% attendance in total. So a lot of them did indicate that they couldn't, but they had also not considered various other things like using other facilities at the school, for example, which is also what's been suggested by the National Minister. So they now do have a standard template that they have to complete and return before the 30th of June, indicating whether or not they can return, taking everything into account. If they cannot implement 100% attendance while maintaining the 1 meter physical distancing requirements, the existing application of the TREPS will continue, and we will assist schools as far as possible to optimally stick to the curriculum requirements. Obviously, we cannot unilaterally overturn the physical distancing requirement, and there is engagement on that with the National Minister. But in the meantime, also there is a provision in the Gazette for differentiated strategy, and obviously we'll take all those factors into account where particular schools are situated as far as the danger is concerned of COVID infections. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. All right.
Hello. Hello.
I'm running out of time.
Hello, Speaker. Put up my hand.
Yes, your microphone, there is a bit of noise. You are number 3 on the list.
Oh, number 3. Okay, I'll wait my turn.
So I've got Honourable Botha, and then I've got the Minister to respond, and then my time is running out.
But what about the number of questions that have been asked? There's a certain number of people who can ask follow-up questions, Speaker.
May I recognize Honourable Botha?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Through you, Speaker, Minister, you have said that in regard to the media reports today, the WCED is not yet sure of how many of the Johnson & Johnson jabs we are going to get, but while we understand the announcement has not been made yet, I just want to check with you what arrangements has the WCED made in the meantime to ensure that our province's school staff will be able to take up the opportunity when it is confirmed? And is there a different strategy for teaching staff versus non-teaching staff?
Honourable Minister. The Honorable Minister. The Honorable Minister was kicked out. She's now coming in again. Honorable Minister, welcome back. There is a question, I'm sure you missed that.
Sorry, yes, I lost connectivity.
I'm going to request the Honorable Member Porter to repeat the question, and then you may then proceed to respond. Honorable Porter.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I just want to check with the Minister, and she has alluded to the media reports today of the jabs that is being released, Johnson & Johnson, for teaching staff. I just want to check with her that although we don't know what is assigned to the Western Cape or to the WCED, I want to know in the meantime, has the WCED, what is the what is the WCED arrangements in regard to ensure that our province's school staff will be able to take up this opportunity when it is confirmed the number of jabs that we get? And is there a different strategy to teaching staff versus non-teaching staff? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Porter. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Botha, for the question. Yes, we are obviously very keen for our staff to get the vaccination as soon as possible. So we have taken the step last week already of informing schools of the possible acquisition of the vaccines so that we could prepare in advance. Obviously, if it's not approved, we can still apply the same processes for future. Schools that received a circular outlining the process to follow, including a consent form for staff that wish to be vaccinated, detailed information pamphlets on the vaccine itself, and what to expect at a vaccination site. We've asked all school staff, regardless of their age, to submit their details in case surplus stock becomes available after those aged 40 and above have been vaccinated. Our districts will then coordinate the venue, date and time with the respective principals when teachers and support staff have been scheduled for vaccination. The actual vaccination procedures will be administered by the Provincial Department of Health, which has secured 2 large sites in the Cape Metropole and 27 smaller sites in the rural areas. And obviously, while the approval of these vaccines for use is not within our control, should we get the green light to roll out the program, we certainly are ready for this initial phase. The beneficiaries of the rollouts is not only confined to educators, it's governing body and WCED appointed teachers at schools, governing body and WCED administrative staff and general workers at schools, also food handlers employed by governing bodies, school transport drivers, as well as governing body and WCED specialized auxiliary services staff at our schools. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, I will give an opportunity to the last question.
Speaker.
You may proceed, Honorable Dagmo.
Thank you very much. Speaker, rising from the replies that the Minister has given, I would like to ask the MEC whether, given the announcement that the Premier made last year and which he repeated in the State of the Province address in Genadendal, that the Western Cape would procure its own vaccines, which obviously in this instance, if that promise had been a serious one, the teachers of the Western Cape could be covered. So as a member of the Executive Council, does MEC Schaefer believe that this promise of the Premier will ever come true or not?
The Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Dagmo.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Dugmore. The fact,
Speaker.
The Honorable Chief Whip.
According to Rule 196.3, a question may not ask for an opinion. From what I heard, the Honourable Member is asking the Minister for an opinion.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. This is during a question. It's a debate on a question, and the question is asked on an existing question. This is not a new question being posed. It's in the middle of a discussion, a debate in a question. And it becomes difficult because the question itself is on COVID. So it's not easy to circumscribe the manner in which members should ask a question in the middle of a question. May I request the Honourable Minister to respond?
Certainly, Speaker. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question. The fact of the matter is we should never have been in a position to have to need to procure our own vaccinations as a province, because if we'd had a competent national government, we would have had vaccinations long ago. If they hadn't been sleeping and busy looting the national coffers, we would hopefully have had vaccinations ordered over a year ago, and we could have been, all our teachers could have been vaccinated by now already. We have certainly been putting absolutely every effort in to try and ensure that we can get vaccinations for the Western Cape. But as you know, the centralized power that the ANC is so fond of, they've been doing absolutely everything in their power to make sure that it has to be done at a national level. So we certainly will continue to do absolutely everything we can to ensure that we get vaccinations for the Western Cape, but it really is a great pity that we haven't yet got them because of the ANC's incompetence. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, this is now the end of questions, and in fact, we have concluded all our questions, and well done to the ministers and to the honourable members. Now we move to questions to the Honourable Premier without notice. The first honourable member is Honourable Mkondlo.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, in light, I think, of the current challenge of COVID, which I think many have written explaining how this COVID has exacerbated pre-existing conditions, especially in developed countries. I want to ask the Premier that the Western Cape continue to be plagued by the challenge of alcohol-related harms and their effects, I think, on the socio-economic realities of many communities. And the Western Cape did well. I think by 2017, there's a gazetted white paper policy on this. Now, the question that one is interested to understand is that with everything that that white paper had identified, I think actually almost about 9 areas which it had identified to sort of deal with this challenge. Which now during COVID we see it's even burdening. I mean, our health care system. We have to look at traumas in hospitals, outside of COVID, but those that are related to wounds that are brought by alcohol-related effects. Now, if one looks at this, one of the things that that policy relates to, it's a fragmented legislation. And it speaks to a number of things that could be done, and amendments that could be done in this regard, and actually a call to consider either the amendment or actually replacing the Liquor Act. So I'm interested for Premier to just indicate to us what is the hold up? When are we getting progress or the bill that amends or actually replaces the current Liquor Act?
Thank you, Honourable Mkondlo. The Honourable Premier is in the house. I recognize you, the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and also to the Honourable Mkondlo for that question. I think a very pertinent and relevant question right now, as she referenced COVID-19. But I mean, even before COVID-19, we as she also referenced, we had the liquor or alcohol abuse game changer, really focusing on what alcohol abuse and the effect that it had on GBV and on our crime level. So absolutely correct in highlighting it here today. And I think specifically I'll answer that question in 2 parts. The one is interesting that this province, whenever we meet with national government around COVID-19, it is always the graphs and the data provided by the Western Cape health department on their ability to measure alcohol-related trauma and just general trauma in our hospitals. It is that slide. Even on Tuesday, when we had the PCC with the president, it was that slide again from the Western Cape that gets used as the data. So I think in line with the programs of this province, the focus of this province, the white paper, where we can measure and how we can measure across various departments. So it's not only docs or economic development or health, all of these departments have a role to play. And of course, we, as part of that graph that gets used, that we use in our own digicons, the graph that the department used comes out of our survey in our various health facilities. And it's exciting to see that even now during COVID-19, we've rolled it out from our 5 big hospitals. We're now rolling it out, and we're almost at all of 20 different hospitals and healthcare sites that are taking those measurements and those data. And even if I go to when we have our ManComs or our management committee meetings, and we look at some of the data perhaps linked from those systems into crime, and we are saying, well, how do we even refine it as we're going towards more and more of our healthcare facilities, and maybe even ask more questions. So it's not necessarily whether alcohol was involved in this trauma, or a vehicle, or a sharp object, or a firearm. You know, where did it happen? So we can start GIS mapping hotspots. So it's amazing to see how technology and data helps us. So the first part is absolutely, we believe in data-led and evidence-led ability to make decisions, to manage. And then the second one goes to the actual re-looking at the act. And I'm happy to be able to answer the honourable member to say that in actual fact, last Wednesday in Cabinet, the Cabinet actually approved the amendments, the drafting of the amendments to the current Liquor Act. So that approval was given. Obviously, as the honourable member knows, there's the first round that happens within the executive component, within government. It does some public participation. Of course, as soon as that comes back, we will then get that amendment to this Parliament and the Standing Committee as quickly as possible, so that this Parliament can also go through its processes of public participation and having a multi-party analysis of the ideas around what are those amendments that we want to bring. But it was actually, the decision was made by Cabinet last Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. Honourable Nkondlo, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And listening to the Premier, I think on the 9 areas, I can see as he is alluding to, I think, the leadership played by the Western Cape Province in terms of number 7, if not 8, on the information and data collection to ensure monitoring, which I think is commendable. But I think if one looks at what has been happening, Premier, currently, is that if you already see one of the things mentioned in that policy submission, or that white paper policy, speaks about the issue of how you disrupt your illegal supply of liquor, which is some of the challenges that your provincial jocks have been picking up during the lockdowns, and now we're going back on lockdown 3. So whilst I appreciate that only last week a decision to move on putting together these amendments, you would recall, Premier, that on the 10th of June in your own standing committee, you made the commitment there to bring quick fixes to liquor legislation when this particular issue on alcohol and related effects to the health system and also safety was brought about. Again, I think even this year, between yourself and Honourable Fritz, you have been speaking about these amendments. So now, if you speak about this happening only last week, that there is a move, what confidence can you give us, and by when can we at least expect some kind of expedition of these things? Because this policy was already in 2017, and I'm sure there's a lot of ground that we could have gained now, even by the time that COVID-19 hits in terms of this particular impact. So I'm concerned about timeframes, because I can see that this has been a shifting goalpost from 2020 response in your committee to actually the speeches you made during SOPA this year in February, and again I think in April in your in one of your media statements. So I'm worried about, I think, the issue of time, because indeed you are very correct. This is one issue that is very important for us to sort of nip in the bud so that we can be able to manage the system. So if you can at least give us that particular confidence in terms of timing of by when can this be expected back into the House. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Member for that follow-up. I think, first of all, as part of that question, she spoke about illegal activity. And I mean, that was one of the issues that I raised specifically at the PCC on Tuesday, saying that obviously you must always understand that when you start to put restrictive and blunt tool measures in place, like we are doing now with restricting alcohol sales over weekends, we're using a blunt tool to deal with, you know, a virus, to deal with COVID-19, to make sure we're slowing the spread, because we know that alcohol abuse has got an impact on our hospital systems, on trauma, on people, you know, not necessarily following the social distancing rules. But of course, when you do use those blunt tools, the risk is that you have illegal activity. And I mean, she did mention illegal activity. And of course, that's what we really have to watch out for. So I think specifically now, when no liquor trading happens Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we need to make sure, these are the off-sales trading, we need to make sure that what's happening is we're not punishing the legal, and suddenly illegal just keeps on doing what they're doing, because you're not going to have any effect then using this as a blunt tool. But the crux of her question went to, and she says only now approved by Cabinet, for the next phase. You must remember that it's not just about making a speech at the beginning of the year around the state of the province and then waiting all this time and then giving approval for the drafting of this piece of legislation. The work has happened. So, of course, when Minister Fritz and his department bring the amendment and the idea around the amendment for approval to Cabinet, they have already identified the areas that they want to bring changes to the legislation. So that work has already happened. And of course, I also agree with her. You've got to also draw a line in the sand at some stage, because every day you could add something else to that amendment. We need to say, let's take it that far. And now we're going to process it. At the same time, probably continuing more work to say, what else can we do over and above those proposed legislative changes that are going to come into the amendment. So, of course, it wasn't as if nothing happened between the State of the Province address and last week, Wednesday. Of course, all of that behind-the-scenes work happens within the working teams, those committees that are dealing with it. They take in the evidence, they consult within the department and within government, and there's a whole range of proposals in that legislative change. Of course, now with the drafting, it gets formalized. And so she has asked for a time frame. All I can say is it's probably going to take a good couple of weeks to get that drafting finalized. But within those good couple of weeks, and hopefully by the time we've seen some decline in the COVID-19 numbers, we'll be able to bring that to this Parliament for public participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Honorable Philander, fortunately, you're also here in the House. I recognize you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, to the Premier. Premier, COVID-19 infections are accelerating in the Western Cape. We are now also starting to see an increase in COVID-19 related deaths in the Western Cape. What is the progress at current in rolling out vaccines to current qualifying recipients within the Western Cape? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much for that question. And of course, that's a really pertinent question right now. I mean, the rolling out of vaccines to our citizens. It kind of links a little bit to a question that was asked in the previous time about whether we're able to procure our own vaccines, and our team is still busy with that because, yeah, quite frankly, and you heard the answer from the Minister of Education, that as a country, I think we are way behind other countries in Africa, let alone the rest of the world. We've got a lot of catch up. And of course, along the way, we've also had many, I want to say curveballs, but failures of getting the numbers of vaccines into our system as possible. And of course, we are in that position right now where we were promised within the system of vaccines supplied to us from the national government procurement processes to say you will receive so many vaccines a week and so many vaccines a week, and it's going to grow. And of course, then we must operate our plans accordingly. And we've started to roll out those vaccine stations. So, for example, we said we want 70 stations for vaccine rollout in the city itself. And right now, we're sitting with 65 of those 70 enabled and ready to roll out. The big problem is that we are now having to slow down those machines. We're having to, because we don't have sufficient vaccines in the system. At the same time, we've said 204, and this is public sector, 204 public sector sites in rural areas, and we're sitting now at 107 sites already enabled in rural areas. And of course, this is also critical, and it's even more difficult in rural areas to keep that supply going because we've got so many more sites. And of course, remember the cold chain, remember the manpower, and really it is pretty frustrating at the moment making sure we've got continuous supply, keep the machine running with what we've got coming in, but at the same time, because we don't want to close anything down, we need to, and waiting for these promises of more and more vaccines. In actual fact, and talking to the earlier question that we heard, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asking the Minister of Education, actually when I got the report on the FDA finding of the destruction of those 60 million vaccines across the world, 2 million here in South Africa that we could not use. They were part of that plan. I immediately over the weekend wrote to the procurement team and the lead in the procurement space to say, our team is in place. I actually received a report on Friday from who they'd contacted, what they'd got to. You know, of course, we can only procure right now any of those 2 vaccines that are approved. We are looking now a bit wider because it looks like there's 3 more vaccines that could be approved by SAPRA, but they are in the process. So at least that enables us to look a bit wider. But I said to the team, go back, try again. If a country didn't have excess for us, let's ask them again. If, you know, we really do need to put extra pressure on the system because quite frankly, as was said beforehand, we're playing our part, but the supply is just not constant and stable enough. And it is actually very, very disappointing how our citizens are being let down in that space. We should have been way ahead of where we are now. I mean, and we're trailing so many countries in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. I now recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you.
Sorry, Honorable Christians. I'm coming to you shortly, sir. Please hang in there. Honorable Philander, your follow-up, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Through you, Premier, you have made mention of the 205 active sites currently in the Western Cape. You've made mention of those public sites in the metro, in the rural areas, as well as those private sites. Premier, it seems like the infrastructure is there. It seems like the trained and the skilled staff are there. The vaccinators are there. How many of that vaccines actually in the next few days will the Western Cape receive ultimately, as well as what are the exact challenges that the Western Cape are experiencing as a province in receiving those vaccines? Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Philander. Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much. Obviously, I must now just think to the Digicon from that question. So we've received 245,000 vaccines in the province thus far. We've already got sort of 200, I think nearly 220,000 of those 245 vaccines in arms. And of course, these last few that we've still got in stock are being utilized and spread around the province right now. The scary part is we are having to say to some of those stations that I've mentioned that we're not going to have stock for you tomorrow or the next day. Those citizens that received the SMS are probably receiving an SMS now to say, sorry, we're running a bit slow. You're going to feel frustration. We've been promised by next Thursday, if I remember correctly, I think another 240,000, I think, for next Thursday. I sincerely hope that those arrive as they are supposed to. I also hope that those vaccines that we heard earlier in the education discussion also arrive. Those are Johnson & Johnson vaccines, extra Johnson & Johnson that are coming in. I think it's 300,000. But on Tuesday, again, in the PCC meeting, the acting Minister of Health said that they were supposed to have arrived that day and they hadn't arrived yet. I think they are still due to arrive tonight or tomorrow. I sincerely hope that they do so that we can actually utilize those into the system as well for the educators. But yeah, we're sitting on the edge at the moment, waiting for vaccines to come to keep this machine running. It is quite critical that we get that supply.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Honorable members, I will give the Honorable Christians the opportunity for the first opportunity, and then the Premier will respond. I will have to unfortunately end it there. I recognize Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the question to the Premier is, the Premier and his government must be extremely concerned about the illegal abalone poachers happening in the Overberg area and also in the West Coast area. I know it's not a provincial competency, but they are killing our economy. People go to the beach, their lives is in danger, and these poachers just goes in the water, many organized, because they're selling it, I believe, to the Chinese market. There's a market for that, and we're losing billions and billions of rand in the black market. Did the Premier and his cabinet speak about this? How are we as a province going to protect our coastal areas? Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I'm sure the Honourable Christians won't mind if I just need to correct one thing. I said I thought around 240. It's actually 140 vaccines, Honourable Philander, that we're getting on the 24th. That's the next tranche of vaccines that we should be getting. Sorry, just to correct that last statement. And then I think the Honourable Christians raises a really important question here. And of course, the abalone poaching in our system, you know, it is also linked directly to the criminality that happens, the drugs, the gangs. It is a major problem in the crime system of the Western Cape. And of course, you know, I listen to many of the members of this House that keep on saying to me, we're wasting our money putting it into crime fighting. We should be spending on other things. I disagree. I think we've got to try to make sure that along with the rest of our constitutional mandates, we've got to also make sure that it's paramount that our citizens are safe. And there's a massive failing on resources, on capabilities to deal with these crime issues that our communities and citizens are facing. And I mean, one of those aspects are definitely the abalone poaching. In the safety plan, when we had to make certain decisions, we said, let's focus on where the murders are happening, on the murder hotspots. But of course, as you cascade down the various activities linked directly to the gang-related crime and a lot of murder that happens in our region, it is that illegal abalone poaching. And it is really how we also get it right between SAPs, between our coastal management. And I think there is also, it's not just the SAPs shortfall and the deployment, it is also coastal management, which is a big issue. You know, we've got our own marine officers, whether they be at a national level through Sand Parks, whether they be marine and coastal management, or even with our own Cape Nature officials. All of them are put under such huge pressure because, as the Honourable Christian says, these poachers are armed. They are linked to really, you know, terrible crime people, and there's just insufficient resource in the system to deal with them. But what we have done is that's why we put the extra resource into the dog units, those canine units, and specifically focus the canine units in the city, on the west and the east coast. So you would have seen in the Overstrand the extra canine units. You would have seen in on the West Coast, the Weskus, also extra canine units. The reason there was that this poached abalone has to be transported. And so it gets transported in two ways. One is actually out to sea. And very happy to see that that joint operation brought in so many of the linkages to poached abalone and drugs coming into our system, where we had that major drug bust in Saldanha Bay the other day. Also linked to these programs of dealing with these illegal poachers. But you'll see those dog units. You'll see also an earlier question that was being asked around highway patrol, and that our own traffic officials are actually empowered as peace officers to do more than just checking your vehicle license and your roadworthiness, but also that we are starting to apprehend the movement of this absolutely illegal fueling of this criminal economy that we have in the region. And I suppose my last part of this is, again, we plead to the members of this House, especially the members of this House, as Minister Fritz said, who are connected to the national government via their political party, to say we need those extra resources. You know, 650,000 more residents in this province than 5 years ago. But where do we see the commensurate increase of policing, of POPs units? Right now, we've got POPs units spread so thinly. We need more policing. We need more POPs units. Where's the anti-gang unit and the work that they're supposed to be doing? Because it's all interlinked into abalone poaching. And we definitely need more resources. It is as if sometimes I think some of these political parties represented here actually see it as a political advantage to see the citizens of this province put under such immense criminal pressure. And we all need to make sure that we at least just get our fair share, let alone, I believe, extra, because there's higher crime rates here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. And thanks to the honorable members who have put the questions to the Premier. Honorable members, that concludes the questions to the Premier without notice. We now move to the member statements. I now recognize the DA.
Speaker, when schools were shut during 2020, the leadership of the country knew vaccines would be the only effective defense. They also were in full cognizance of the general lack of capacity in terms of infrastructure, teaching and learning materials. As I have quoted from the Honourable Dugmore in this House, when he spoke 14 years ago of the desperate need for more funding to flow from national to Western Cape education coffers. Speaker, education is a basic, essential service. It is also a human right. But we still await the arrival of vaccines for teachers and many other residents at the coal face. The National Minister for Basic Education says the Department of Health must just send the jabs. She even says, and I quote, "We are ready," unquote. But Speaker, I say we are running out of time and temporary fixes do not count. For example, Minister Schaefer shared her reply on the appointment of 19,000 teaching assistants on the 3rd of June and the great help it offered schools in the management of COVID-19 and employment of young people. Unfortunately, these contracts came to an end after 6 months. This is an initiative championed by the WCED before it gained traction nationally. This is much like the mobile classrooms, a Western Cape solution, and placing over 20,000 learners per year without any national support at all, another Western Cape solution. Also, the background work done to prepare our vaccination rollout before we even receive jabs, another Western Cape solution. Speaker, the lack of proper planning and strategic management from national government has delayed the appointment of more teaching staff amidst an ANC-produced public service wage crisis. Rapid infrastructure growth in line with demands again comes as a dire reminder of national absence. Speaker, we don't need another lockdown. We need the ANC gone.
Your time. Thank you, Honorable Porter. Honorable members, I recognize the ANC. The ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. My Honorable Speaker.
You are audible. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the President announced recently that we are now at level 3 in our battle to contain the spread of the COVID pandemic. And we know the alarming increase of infections and hospitalizations in our province. It is time that we are honest, because one of the major contributing factors to the spread of the pandemic in the Western Cape is the issue of alcohol, and in particular alcohol abuse. During the first and second wave, we noted a drastic decrease in alcohol-related emergency cases when a curfew and a ban on the sale of alcohol were imposed. This reduction freed all resources to be redirected to the management and control of COVID-19 cases. We knew that our youth across all communities has a youth drinking problem. Yet, whenever the national government restricts the hours of trading, there's an outcry from certain elements in this province, as this government led by the Premier has consistently taken the side of the liquid industry and this put our lives at risk. Speaker, we as the ANC are not suggesting going back to the prohibition days, but we are merely saying that there are clear measures that can be put in place to help combat youth alcoholism and other challenges that we are currently facing. In 2017, the provincial government passed a white paper on the alcohol harm reduction, which was also gazetted in 2017. It is now 2021. 4 years later, and absolutely nothing has been done to have a Western Cape Liquid Act. We demand that the white paper that was adopted in 2017 be immediately implemented, and that the Premier owes this province an explanation as to why this matter had not been finalized then. It is alleged that the former Speaker of the City of Cape Town was closely involved with the liquor industry, and what we have is a unique situation in the Western Cape, where the trading hours, which is a municipal function, are the longest compared to other provinces. And this is because there's a situation where local municipalities are allowed to adjust trading hours. Nothing is done about this, and the City of Cape Town is not called in order. I thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize the DA.
So you then have the DA and then my statement. I must just get ready. It'll just take 5 minutes. You can stay.
Honorable Speaker, I trust that I'm audible.
Order, Honorable, the leader of the opposition. Your mic is active.
Should have left.
Thank you. Honorable Allen, you are audible. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Speaker, this week it was reported our cops splurge 100 million rand on spy technology they cannot use, and that the equipment is gathering dust while crime is on a constant rise. 3 weeks earlier, reports read that SAPS lost 1.6 billion rand in irregular purchasing of PPEs. There appears to be more investigation on these two matters than on crime itself, Speaker. And I'm appalled, I am angry and upset by this, and many residents in the Western Cape share those sentiments, because SAPS's inefficiencies further erode public trust in the lead crime-fighting agency, the SAPS. We still desperately need additional policing resources in the province, but all we receive is mismanagement of finances, blatant corruption, and a police service in free fall. Speaker, we see this in the evident explosion of the DNA backlog, which denies justice. Secondly, we've exposed that the conviction rate for the last financial year in the Western Cape for all crimes stand at a new low of 25%. And that we need additional 500 detectives, and that those that we do have are overburdened and overworked. Next, Speaker, we have hundreds of officers who have been found misusing the use of SAPS vehicles in terms of the policy. And Speaker, the destruction of illegal guns is extremely leaky, inefficient and fuels murders in the Western Cape due to corrupt SAPS officials because it's entirely centralized in Pretoria. But Speaker, besides the corruption and the mismanagement within SAPS, from station level right through the Central Firearm Registry, there appears to be no political will to turn the situation around. And Speaker, this flies in the face of every man and woman in blue who dedicate their lives to the service. The situation is quite close to a potentially great action screenplay without a capable director. And Speaker,
Honorable Allen, your time is up.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Allen. Honorable members, I now recognize the Good Party.
It's good. Let me just switch off my mic.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, a week ago, this House debated the state of safety and economic security in the Western Cape. And not too long after that, the Cape Flats experienced yet another episode of taxi-related shootings in Delft and Younger and Manenberg, but also in Ceres in the Boland region. In reference to last week's debate, we were challenging the national government's failure to keep us safe and to keep us in jobs. What an interesting position, if we should consider that this government has itself failed the people of the province on exactly that, safety and security and economic stimulation paving the way for job creation. If we should look again at the provincial safety plan, which is really nothing more than a non-functional blueprint, this government finds it fitting to scrutinize the failures of others when they themselves are a failure with no feasible alternative to ensure this province is safe and conditions of security enables economic stimulation. This, in its most basic form, is the highest level of cowardice. It should not be news to a functional provincial executive that the mandate of a government is to create policy certainty and trust within various sectors to stimulate economic growth, leading to job creation. Safety and security, in addition to social development, are amongst the factors which directly impacts this. The latest taxi-related shootings are testament to a non-delivering safety plan and makes us question the billions this government budgeted over a 5-year period to prioritise safety in the city of Cape Town. It should be noted the DA has been in government in the Western Cape since 2009, and in a period of almost 12 years, we've seen an increase, not a decrease, in crime in the province, making Cape Town one of the most unsafest cities in the world. Splurging taxpayers' hard-earned money with no real solutions has become a norm for the national and DA-led provincial governments. The Western Cape Safety Plan is lip service at its best. Speaker, the Western Cape government's idea of combating crime is to deploy partially trained law enforcement officers.
You have exhausted your time. Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now recognize the ACDP, Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my city bus started operations in May 2010, shortly before the FIFA World Cup kicked off in June. In July 2014, the My City Bus N2 Express route was opened for Khayelitsha and Mitchells Plain to Cape Town. The numbers of passengers using the N2 Express showed a steady increase. In July 2015, passenger numbers on the N2 Express has increased to 84,873, an increase of 4% over June 2015. The service showed good growth. Month on month, it was becoming an integral part of the transport in Cape Town. The service has proved its value and was particularly embraced by the people of Khayelitsha and the people of Mitchells Plain, as can be seen by the passenger number increases. November 2015, 111,000 people used the service. In November 2017, a number increased to 219,000. These figures are reflective of the reliable transport service that is run with consistent efficiency. Speaker, now this service has been suspended, meaning that there is more strain on Golden Arrow and more strain on the taxi services. Speaker, the ACDP would appreciate if the Western Cape government can liaise or have talks with the city of Cape Town to bring back the service, the efficient service of the My City N2 Express. Now, with the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic in the Western Cape, where President Cyril Ramaphosa had moved the country to level 3.
You have exhausted your time.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition, you are audible. You may proceed, please.
Thank you. Speaker, the ANC notes the adding of JP Smith's name to the long list of DA leaders who have falsified and misrepresented their CVs. While we know the DA for their dishonesty and deflection, we note that unlike the former MEC for Transport and Public Works, MEC Madikizela, JP Smith, Natasha Mazzoni, Xanthia Limburg, and Marius Kuhn remain in their jobs. Compare that to what happened to Bonginkosi Madikizela. Unlike that, the former MEC, they are not suspended pending the outcome investigations. The DA has double standards. Once again, reaffirm that the DA has one set of policies for white people and another set of policies for their black members. The DA remains blatant in their racism. Yet we also know that this racism has been experienced through the denial of race in policy, not supporting broad-based black economic empowerment or redress in our province. This racism is seen in the skewed way resources are still allocated to former white communities in our cities and towns in the provinces compared to the historically African and colored community. Going along with this racism in policy and practice, we now see this rising of symptoms of sexism and sexual abuse within the DA as well. The voters of the Western Cape must see this ruling party, the DA, for what
really
it is.
Your former leader, Marius Fransman, was fired.
No, that's an interjection. That's an interjection. That's an interjection.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Sorry, Speaker, I'd like to finish my last paragraph, please. I was interrupted.
You may
and
please
proceed. That was deliberate. They want to not hear the truth, so they stop me. Please, Speaker, I want to finish my last sentence. It's one sentence.
Please proceed, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
DT must organize mtwabeni ka DA. Asifuna kuba DA izokuba khona. Kufuneka sizokuorganize umtwabeni for a DA. Ka.
Thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
The Speaker, quick to point me out.
Members. Honorable members, I wish to reiterate my earlier point I've made here in the House. If you so wish to speak on a point of order, please do so by raise of your hand. And also use the chat room for that purpose. But we do not allow interjections in terms of Rule 1. And this has been a consistent practice throughout the lockdown period. So if the honorable members want to break that rule, then the standing rules shall apply. And that is really not something I wish to do here by trying to limit the democratic capability of this House. But the members must just help me so that I'm able to have a smooth running House with your help. It's your House. So I'm requesting that the honorable members exercise some restraint in order to make this possible. I now go to the Democratic Alliance.
Honorable Speaker, the Western Cape is committed to grow the economy and to address the high unemployment levels, particularly amongst the youth. Regrettably, national government is not partnering with us in this regard. I'm particularly referring to the serious delays with the construction work on the Clem-William Dam Wall and Brandvlei Feeder Canal projects. With regard to the Clem-William Dam, the National Treasury had, as far back as 2014, set aside 2 billion rand for the increase in the dam's height by 13 meters. In doing so, the dam's capacity would increase by 2.4 times. This would provide irrigation for an extra 5,500 hectares of land. And this translates to an expected 3,500 sustainable full-time jobs. Despite the construction project being relaunched in 2018 and 100 million rand already having been spent at the time, not a single proverbial brick has been laid. The reason for this is that none of the tenders for the subcontractors needed for specialized work have been finalized. It is reported that a forensic investigation identified irregularities in the bid processes, particularly with bid documentation containing requirements that seem to irrationally favor certain contractors. At Brandvlei, a similar situation ensues. By raising the banks of the Holsloot feeder canal, the community would experience a significant increase in job creation, food production, and exports. Yet though all the plans and authorizations have been finalized, construction work has been delayed by more than 2 years. Speaker, agriculture already supports 424,000 primary and secondary jobs in the Western Cape. Imagine how many more jobs would there be if the ANC government allowed the proverbial and actual water to flow. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, I now recognize the Freedom Front Plus. Honourable Murray.
Thank you so much, Speaker. The Freedom Front Plus has noted with shock and outrage the recent revelations that 3 senior members of the DA, represented at all 3 spheres of government, have falsely claimed to be in possession of tertiary qualifications. This should be condemned in the strongest terms. The Freedom Front Plus therefore wish to assure the general public that the doctorates held by our leaders and others, Dr. Peter, genuine and open to any inspection by the public or the media. We hope the voting public will consider these facts before casting their votes in future elections. Falsely claiming to have competencies and qualifications is robbing voters of their right to consider and vote for the best equipped and qualified representatives. It is simply treachery. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Murray. Honourable members, I now call upon the Honourable Brancase Al-Jamar.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, it is Youth Month, and we all know the tragic events of 16 June 1976 and the 1980s were turning points in the history of South Africa. Forgive me for focusing on youth again, but as the future leaders of this country, the struggles and challenges youth are facing today deserve to be addressed and acted on effectively. I attended Youth Day events in Gugulethu and Ravensmead yesterday, and the major challenges facing our youth is poverty, unemployment, crime, drugs, and the lack of sports facilities in communities and at schools. We commend projects like the Youth Safety Ambassadors programs, but more could be done to help our youth survive in the crime-ridden townships and Cape Flats. We have 21 municipalities with an allocated budget of 20 million rand each. This is a far cry from serious intervention given the complexity and scale of the problems in the historically disadvantaged communities throughout the Western Cape. The neighborhood watches are playing a good role, but ultimately it is the province's duty to complement the safety and security strategy of the national government. In the middle class areas, their relative security is not due to the better efforts of the province, which is controlled by the DA. On the contrary, this is because these communities use after income tax money to pay for access controls and private armed response teams and sophisticated alarm systems. The Western Cape Liquor Act should be even more stringent. We have witnessed during COVID-19 lockdowns the visible link on bans on sales of alcohol and the reduction in violent crime.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Your time is now concluded.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I now recognize the DA.
Speaker, Deirdre Bartman.
You may proceed, Honorable Bartman.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, fellow South Africans. Recently, South Africa has been plagued with renewed load shedding, which resulted in blackouts in some areas. Despite this, we have learned that the ANC can switch load shedding on and off for politicians at National Parliament as and when they wish. This luxury, however, is not afforded to laundromats or hairdressers whose businesses depend entirely on electricity. This luxury is not afforded to small and micro enterprises whose stills have to operate on batteries, but only for as long as the battery lasts, or when the equipment they save years for break because of the surge in energy when their power is restored. This luxury is not afforded to women who bear the brunt of household chores, a burden which has increased during the COVID-19 lockdown. This luxury is not afforded to butchers whose freezers strip when power is restored post-load shedding. This luxury is not afforded to the tourism industry, who are still recovering slowly from draconian lockdown regulations and who have to close down local restaurants, coffee shops or movie theatres because they cannot afford generators. Despite these shortcomings, the DA-governed City of Cape Town is able to generate additional capacity thanks to the help of the Steenbras pumped storage plant, which has additional reserve capacity in order to assist in averting one stage of load shedding. This is not possible if you live in an Eskom area within the city. In comparison, recently news headlines regarding the city of Johannesburg read, quote, "Load shedding chaos pushes city power grid to the brink," quote close, which highlighted prolonged blackouts and a long backlog of open work orders on essentially a non-existing system. Speaker, Eskom is stripping away the power of the people, and the DA urges voters to accordingly vote for an energy-secure Western Cape in 2021 local government elections. Help us keep the lights on. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bartman. Honorable members, that concludes the member statements. I now afford an opportunity in terms of Rule 145, subsection 6, to the executive for a response. If they so wish, I now recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you. Want to also join me in reaction. I'd first of all like to just react to the statement by the Honourable Heron Good, who time after time comes to this House and loves to attack the safety plan and specifically the deployment of our LEAP officers. My challenge to him is to stop being a desktop politician and stop behaving as the key ANC coalition partner that you are in coalition with the ANC at national level, and start attacking the real issues in our province, the lack of deployment of SAPS officers to keep our citizens safe. I also challenge him to get out from behind his desktop and go and meet some of these LEAP officers, go and walk with some of them, and also talk to the SAPS officers and ask them what value is added when LEAP officers join them in their patrols to make our citizens and the spaces our citizens live in safer. I just look at the LEAP management WhatsApp group and I see things like, please help in Khayelitsha Station Precinct, especially Site C, Bongweni area, taxi violence flare up. Then I see a photograph of a vehicle number plate. It says law enforcement 1345, law enforcement officers deployed, corner of Spine and N2, vehicle hijacked, 17 school children on the N2 direction, Cape Town. Then it says apprehension of one suspect, rest disappear into the bush, SAPS on their way to support the LEAP officers. Then you see shots going off on the sports field, Leiden, Delft, please deploy. Then you see, and you go on, you see 2 gangsters killed, Dixies are shooting at Taxi Rank West Bank now. This was at 13:36 today. Chief Smith, Inspector Hamilton, please assist in West Bank. I ask the Honourable Heron to get out from behind his desk and go and do proper oversight, go and meet those men and women.
How do you know I haven't? I've been there.
Citizens
Premier,
safe.
I have been there and I've seen for myself it's a waste of time.
Honourable Heron. Honourable members.
Speaker, it's not possible to allow the Premier to mislead the House.
Point of
I made
order,
a speech
Speaker.
several weeks ago, Speaker. I made a speech saying I've been there and seen the LEAP officers.
Point of order.
Calling again. Order. What's the point of order, Honourable Wenger and Honourable Bartman? I start with the Honourable Bartman, the Deputy Chief Whip of the DA.
Speaker, interjections are not allowed when people are answering questions. Can we please remind members that interjections are not allowed, please?
Thank you, Honourable Bartman. I was dealing with that. Yes, thank you very much for helping me with that. I hope that the honourable members respect that. I have indicated with the House earlier that I am not engaging members because there is no rules to make the effective decision on some of the repeat offenders. But I am doing so because I want us to engage as adults and also as public representatives, because this is our house. But when there is a deliberate undermining of the authority of the presiding officer and an attempt to overrule the presiding officer, that will be a complete disregard of this house and its rules, and therefore a contempt of the chair. And I don't want to have a situation where we have to deal with issues on those bases. I really wish to request the honourable members and implore the honourable members to work with me and any presiding officer seated here. I would like us to really work as colleagues and work in the best interest of the people of this province and the interest of this house. I've got the honor, I'm sorry, Honourable Premier, for that treatment, and that is definitely not how we want to receive you in the house. I would like to request the Honourable Minister Bridel, and that will be followed by Honourable Mitchell. Remember, Honourable members, you've got to be within
Speaker?
your 5 minutes, and there's 3 more minutes.
Order, Speaker.
Is that another point of order?
Was the Premier finished? He was still busy.
The Honourable Premier was done, yes. He thanked me and thanked the House, and he was...
Apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognize Honourable Minister Bridel.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the Honourable Duckmore liked to play with the truth. He liked to mislead this House. Honourable Madikizela resigned after he acknowledged that he's done wrong, and he was willing to pay a very high price for that, setting an example to all politicians in this country. The other DA members are surely entitled to a defence. We believe in the rule of law, and I think it's really a sad day when we start to misuse freedom of speech of this House to name people who was already found innocent, like the Honourable Mazzoni. Honourable Chairperson, but one can expect that from Honourable Duckmore because he actually has got nothing to offer this country because his party has led us into bankruptcy. Honourable Speaker, I will fight for our members, and I will fight for people's right to be able to defend themselves. And I will also fight that people get just treatment and that their sentence will speak to what they've done wrong. And Honourable Speaker, it's also important to touch on the Honourable Duckmore mentioned the ANC BBBEE policy, which led this country into, let's look at Eskom, SAA, Denel, that's what they've got for their policy. The DA has put on the table the economic justice policy, a policy that will create opportunities, that will get people out of poverty, that will get our youth into jobs. But no, the ANC can't see that because they must have policies that look after a couple of cadres. Honorable Speaker, the DA will act in the best interest of its country in everything we do. The ANC, Honorable Speaker, and the ANC is deliberately putting on their mics so that they can distort and run away from the truth. The ANC, let me just give you one example, the step aside rule of the ANC. The honorable member step aside, run to the newspapers to get coverage. But in every meeting, he scans for the ANC and he's getting a full salary, paid to do what? Honorable Speaker, the DA is the only party that can govern, the only party that can save South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Point of order.
Honorable members, I have Honorable Mitchell, Honorable Minister Michel, but that's less than a minute. Honorable Dagma, what's your point of order?
No, Speaker, I just wanted to ask in regard to your earlier ruling where you admonished various members and you mentioned that they are repeat offenders. Now, clearly today, Honourable Heron was very upset because of what he heard from the Premier, but Honourable Mackenzie, in my view, is a repeat offender. Have you made a ruling on who is a repeat offender? Because I want to ask you on this point of order that you make a ruling on the conduct of Honourable Mackenzie, who is indeed a repeat offender.
Thank you, Honourable Dagmo. There is only one presiding officer, and I've not made a ruling on who is that. So I would not like a situation where the rulings are made from the floor. In this case, I have indicated to the House that I need your help as leaders of political parties. And of course, I would really call upon on the whipparies, the chief whips and whips of the various parties to help me to maintain order in the House. At this stage, I've not mentioned the honorable members whom I regard as the repeat offenders. I sit on this chair all the time and I know who they are. And I've deliberately not mentioned them. In terms of the rules, I am empowered to do so and go beyond that, and I've not done so because I wish to engage the honorable members. We are all elected representatives, and I think our responsibility is bigger than what we are trying to achieve by heckling at each other and breaking the rules. So I wish you could help me. At this stage, I have not mentioned anyone. I would like to recognize Honorable Mitchell, and then I want to close at this point.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, can you give me an indication of how much time there's left?
You've got a minute, Honourable Mitchell.
All right, thank you very much. Speaker, whilst my department clearly has a role to play, the South African Police Service must take the lead with regards to the taxi violence, with regards to these cases that are being investigated and that offenders are criminally prosecuted. SAPS is represented, Speaker, on the Transport Priority Committee, and an emergency meeting in this instant was called to coordinate our actions and legislation as required by Section 41 of the South African Constitution dealing with cooperative governance. Speaker, but with the decline, and this is what we need to understand, with the decline in the rail service, there's an increased pressure on road-based public transport service, and we need a peaceful and united taxi industry in this province. So the perception is that's been created that this government doesn't care is absolutely wrong. I can assure you, Speaker, that my department has invested a considerable amount of time, funding, and resources into mediation efforts to stabilize the minibus taxi industry and to prevent a loss of lives.
Mitchell. Thank you. Honourable members, that concludes the replies by the executive to the member statements. and have a great evening further. The Deputy Speaker now takes over. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker. We now move over in terms of Rule 151 to notices of motion. In terms of Rule 151, all motions by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We now move to these motions without notice, and if I can just remind the members that in terms of the new standing rule of 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolence or congratulatory, which were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 15th of June 2021. I've also been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting, political parties did submit the names of honourable members in the desired order of the speaking and those who wish to move a motion without notice in this sitting of the House. I will therefore acknowledge, just for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members' motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows: Honourable Allen, Honourable Christians, Honourable Allen again, and Honourable van der Westhuizen, both once and twice. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to this House. Are there any objections? No. No objections? Agreed to. The motion will appear in the minutes of the proceedings in the Hansard in each individual member's names, as if that member had read them out aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 152.d. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that the 30 minutes as per Standing Rule of 152d will start now. If I can ask for my table staff to just assist me. I now recognise Honourable Sayed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the Western Cape Education Department and the South African Human Rights Commission are called to investigate the alleged racist and discriminatory remarks made by a grade 11 teacher against black learners that led to a protest at the German International School in Cape Town, and that serious consequences should follow. I thank you.
Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Yes, it's a private school. Yes, we
I hear there are objections. There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order
I
paper.
object to anything where you're fighting racism, because
No,
they
ma'am,
safeguard
not true.
racism.
Order, members.
Yeah, that's what the DA stands for, racism.
No,
Honourable
that's
Sayed, can I have an order, please? Honourable members. I now move over to Honourable Brinkcase.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I then move over to Honourable Kama.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I move a motion without notice that the House commends the National Criminal Justice System for the double life sentence imposed by the Western Cape High Court on Stephen Fortune for the 2020 rape and murder of Michaela Williams. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections? No. Agreed to. We then move over to Honourable Murray.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that this House, in terms of its oversight function, requests the Minister of Local Government in the Western Cape to enter into serious talks with the City Mayor of Cape Town so as to urgently address the issue of rubbish piling up and the absence of dustbins in the areas of Nooitgedag, The Hague, Roosendaal and Eindhoven in Delft. This constitutes a serious health hazard which is causing much distress amongst the people and which should be addressed without delay. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Object.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognise Honourable Murray. I now recognise Honourable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes extra COVID vaccine sites are provided in Gauteng and senior citizens may go without an appointment for their jabs and call on the Western Cape to speedily get on with their job. I so move. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Object, Deputy Speaker.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognize Honourable Dugmore.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Honourable Dugmore.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Speaker, I would like to move on behalf of the African National Congress that this House notes a further example of serious DA misconduct in George, where DA Ward Councillor Pastor Melvin Roelse insulted Mrs. Charlene Titus, a good candidate and a senior citizen, saying that she does not own the house she's staying in, wears a wig, and other derogatory comments, resulting in Mrs. Titus laying a charge of criminal injury against Councillor Roelse, and therefore, Deputy Speaker, calls on the George Speaker, DA Councillor Gerrit Pretorius, to urgently launch an investigation into what is clearly a breach of the Code of Conduct and an insult to Mrs. Titus and all senior citizens. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections? There are objections, Honourable Dugmore. The motion order paper. Order. I now recognise finally Honourable Said.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House expresses concern with the fact that the majority of schools in our province, especially in poor and working class communities, will not be ready to welcome back learners on a full-time basis while still maintaining COVID physical distancing protocols due to already overcrowded classrooms. That the number of mobile classrooms being provided is not sufficient, and that the Western Cape Education Department should engage with Provincial Treasury for additional emergency funding for more classrooms and teaching posts. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Objection.
There are objections. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Order, honourable members. That concludes the business for the day. The Secretary will now end. Mr. Stamela will now end the meeting and all the members will be exited from the sitting. Thank you very much. The House is adjourned.
Thank you. Even Winful objected to say.
Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, thank you.
Thank you.
What did you say, Gideon?
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, colleagues, members. Have a good evening.